So there's an example. When we laugh, when I saw Hassan laughing or when I saw Cade laughing a little bit at that, we release endorphins into our system. So what do endorphins do? They're the painkiller molecule and the social euphoric molecule. So it allows us to feel more social. You go to a comedy show, everybody's laughing, you feel so connected with everybody in the room, right? And it's a great way to break up presentations, or on a date, if things are getting dense, then bringing up a little joke in there, getting us to laugh. We basically recalibrate by releasing endorphins, right? So Dr. DeMartini did a really good job of this at the breakthrough experience that I attended. He is very cerebral, very fucking dense content, but he would bring up these random sexual fucking jokes that came out of nowhere. And then everybody would laugh, and then we were re-engaged into the material. Every about 15 minutes, he would bring up a little joke that would get us re-engaged. What he's doing, we have a cortisol dopamine state. So dopamine, when we're learning something or when we're envisioning our future, dopamine is the pursuit of pleasure molecule. So him sharing that very good information, I could see my future getting bigger and brighter, right? But also we were releasing a lot of cortisol. It was fucking dense. So what he did was release endorphins through the laughing, and then he was able to recalibrate that cortisol and dopamine balance to continue to focus on the content, right? So cortisol gets us into action. Too much cortisol makes us scattered as fuck. Like, this is tea right now, but like coffee, great cortisol, dopamine balance. That's why most people like fucking love coffee, right? And the main neurotransmitters, and I love sharing this with you guys, and for the guys who have already heard this, thanks for listening to it again. I call it emotional alchemy. The 5 core neurotransmitters to know and to think about, and that I use basically in any influence situation, whether it's over myself or within a relationship. Knowing these, and if somebody wants to write them down for me in the chat, that would be super helpful. The core neurotransmitters or hormones that you want to release to get a full experience out of life and to influence and help somebody else get a full experience out of an interaction with you. You want dopamine, the pursuit of pleasure molecule, which produces focus and motivation, right? When you join the program, Cade and Jaime and Hassan, when you join, you get that dopamine spike. You're like, fuck yeah, this is new chapter. Let's go, painting a new vision, right? Pursuing a new pleasure, right? And basically, what you guys are doing and what we're doing in our marketing is building up, building in on sales calls as well, building up a cortisol state, putting people into their pain and into the issues that they're currently experiencing, painting a bright future for them of what life could look like, releasing dopamine, releasing a little testosterone, a little rah-rah, especially towards the end of a sales call to boost taking action, and also oxytocin. So we're releasing oxytocin, feeling connected with one another through stories of empathy. So the more you share your story, or you have testimonials where clients share their stories, and we feel connected with that person. I used to struggle with depression for 6 years, and I was in and out of therapy. I was taking Wellbutrin and Lexapro, and I don't know, one day I just woke up and read this poem called Invictus by William Ernest Henley, and the final 2 lines were, "I'm master of my fate and captain of my soul." And I started using that as my mantra, and I set a goal to lose 20 pounds and to quit drinking in 90 days. I started taking massive amounts of action, and I achieved it. Yada, yada, yada. Boom, oxytocin from a story of empathy, a little bit of serotonin from a happy ending from this is the thing that I did. And we're taking people through a chemical state to put them into the buyer state to actually join, right? What is the pain? What is the pleasure? The pain is a lot of cortisol release, right? The pleasure is a lot of dopamine release. And the stronger those can be, and you can bridge the gap through stories and through a little bit of logic and statistics. Here are the things that my clients have done. That's all we're doing there. And then it's that person is in that state. I want a dopamine release to get rid of this feeling, essentially. And that's what pressing the buy button is, right? A dopamine release, a new future. Cool, let's go. All right. I kind of just fucking rambled, but to go through those neurotransmitters, the big ones are dopamine, motivation, focus, right? When we create a future for ourselves, when we create a vision, when we create a mission statement, and we review that every single morning, we release more dopamine into our system, so we're more motivated and focused throughout the day. Dopamine is the pursuit of pleasure molecule. When we are talking to our significant other and we start planning a trip, like I did with the girl that I'm talking to here, she released a lot of dopamine in my brain by painting a picture of what this trip is going to look like. We're going to go to this festival. Rufus de Sol is going to be there. She was releasing a shit ton of dopamine, a lot of motivation, a lot of focus, right? So always be painting a future with your team members, with your significant other, with your prospects. What does the future look like together, right? So dopamine, happy ending. Love it. Happy ending, serotonin. So now you can associate the two. So then we want to talk about dopamine. Oxytocin is empathy, stories of empathy, right? That's the best way to release oxytocin, the bonding molecule. That's when we feel connected with one another, where we're telling stories of empathy. So I used to be here, I struggled so much, and this is how I overcame, right? And what people will do is put themselves in your shoes and be like, damn, I've been there before. I understand you. They're releasing oxytocin, they feel more bonded. When a woman has a baby, when a mother has a baby, she's releasing a lot of oxytocin naturally, and that's why there's a huge bond between a baby and a mom, right? It's a bonding molecule. Then we have endorphins. When you work out really fucking hard, you kind of just feel a little bit more, give it about 30 minutes, but you feel more social afterwards. You feel less like stuck and reserved. And great way to release that is through jokes and humor in terms of social interactions. When things get heavy, when people feel disconnected, when you can break in with a joke or when you can break in with a story that's funny, it's a great way to break up that density and start allowing people to feel more socially connected, right? Testosterone is interesting. It's more of like raw power, let's fucking go type deal. So it's a slight challenge. Like you can challenge somebody a little bit that will release some testosterone in them, but it's a fine line of overdoing it and moving them to cortisol state and being angry, right? So you got to be just like, if you're challenging somebody, doing it in a loving way where they feel that empowerment, that can be super powerful. But if it goes a little bit overboard, it can go to other primary neurotransmitters, especially cortisol. Serotonin is interesting. It's more like happy endings, stories, that sort of stuff, feeling happy, joy, that sort of stuff. In terms of naturally releasing it for ourselves, feeling calm, feeling grounded, it's the antidote to cortisol. So if we go for a walk in nature, we naturally release a lot more serotonin. How many of you guys have gone on a walk and then the thoughts just start to click and you start to like have streamlined thoughts, all of that? That's because you're releasing more serotonin because you're breathing more naturally in nature and you're around that nature, you're around novelty. When you're around novelty, you also release a lot of serotonin. And that's the antidote to cortisol. So you're reducing your cortisol state, you're releasing more serotonin, and then your thoughts start to connect up and line up so much easier. That's why I'm a big proponent of breath work. Whenever we're breathing in the belly and moving those organs around, we're releasing more serotonin into our system, which is reducing our cortisol, right? And then we're more clear. We don't want to release cortisol too much, sometimes to snap people into action. I could release cortisol on you guys right now by going just like a loud noise. Boom, kind of tightens up. And a recommendation with cortisol is if you're in a high cortisol state, we never get anything fucking good done in a high cortisol state. It's all scattered. It feels like a lot of doing, but not actually getting somewhere. That's when we know we're in a high cortisol state, right? So what we want to do there is release a lot of serotonin into our system. I recommend breath work or meditation or going for a walk in nature. And we can reduce those cortisol levels so we can actually have clear intentions and do what we want to do instead of being stuck in those automatic negative thoughts that come through a high cortisol state, right? Those are the big ones. We kind of mix self-mastery with relationship mastery there, but are you guys tracking?
Yeah, good stuff, man.
Beautiful. Thank you, Cade. Is there one I want to add there? No, good. Anytime we're telling stories, we're releasing dopamine since it's the pursuit of pleasure molecule. So the better storyteller we are, the more motivated and focused people are to hang out with us and to join our programs, so on and so forth, right? Another way that we can naturally release dopamine in people is when we pause. You release more dopamine, you are more focused, yada, yada, yada. Space between the notes. And also you were wondering what was going to happen next, right? You can do a quick pause. If you feel like you've lost somebody's attention, you can just pause. And you're like, oh, focus again, right? Cool. Any little like tips, tricks, like one-liners, little things that stand out? I would love for you guys to add it into the chat. Was like one thing that really stuck out to you during that section right there?
I'm kind of multitasking. I'm at dinner right now, but I was like, when I heard you pause, I was like, wait, I left me on a cliffhanger over here. I was in the middle of a dinner and we're both like, what? Tell me.
Kent, can everybody hear Kent? Oh shit, something. I think that's on my end, Kent.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I couldn't hear you guys the whole time. That's interesting. Cool.
There's like, there's so much space between the notes on Andrew's side. I was saying the space between the notes, I just love that because like I was sitting here and I was in the middle of making dinner, but I was listening the whole time and I'm like, but what is it? Like I was like drawing, I was like, wait, what happened? Like, tell me more, you know? So it definitely works, you know? So I'm like, got him.
Fucking love it. One more share. Cool. Cortisol should be released conversely and deliberately. Perfect. Noah, nothing ever gets done in a high stress state. Nothing productive gets done in a high stress state.
Mm-hmm.
It's our monkey mind taking over, thinking that we're getting somewhere. But
Can I share something?
Yeah.
So get this, I'm working with a hypnotist, and one of the things he said was pretty dope. Like when you have 150 bits of information, Lewis probably knows this, but like your mind is literally, your subconscious mind is getting blasted with like 50 million, right? And if we only have a tunnel vision of like this much information, right, it's coming in. When you add stress and cortisol, and like, let's say it's my scuba diving goggles, right? And this is what I see. I turn around and when you add stress and cortisol and all that, it's almost like you're looking through like a little tiny, like this hole, right? And it's just like, okay, I get aware of it. Now I'm back out to here. I get stress out of my way. But then that's just only 1% of the conscious mind can actually see that, or hear that and like bring in that information. The subconscious mind gets the other 99%. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about right now is like getting into different states. And I was like literally sitting here like, this is exactly what Andrew like preaches, you know, like there's 3 states that literally touch on that: breath work, like your physical state, and then like clearing your focus. And it's really interesting because if this is all you're getting, like a horse with blinders on, then you want the highest yield of that information. You can't put any more in, but you can find the highest concentration of that information by getting rid of all the bullshit and being completely relaxed. And then he was also saying meditation, like really, sorry, she wants to go out, but like, so when you're like, the highest concentration of that information is literally like, we want to make sure that we're in a great state of mind. Breath work changes that. So like your absorption of that is the highest quality of like the highest yield. Sorry, I messed that up, but I think people understand what I'm saying.
Fucking nailed it, dude. That was great. And it's interesting. Dog barked, right? There's a little cortisol release from a loud noise. Then it kind of scatters us around. And then it was like, sorry, I fucking messed that up, right? But that dog didn't bark. You would have stayed on that trend of thought. Or if there would have been hyper presence within yourself and groundedness and would have just noticed the dog bark and let it, instead of that, it going down a new neural pathway, then it would have been a different experience there, right? So doing our energy rituals and ground calm, being calm and being able to stay on the attention that we're putting our attention to, we can hear that thing and we can notice it, but it doesn't take us away from focus, from our attention, right? But I love the analogy of like the blinders, right? Because when we are stressed, it feels like this, but we feel like we can see everything. Like, this is my experience, this is my reality. But when we reduce our stress and we do the meditation and we're around people that fucking love us and all of that stuff, our life opens up, right? And we're more aware of everything and we start to flow more.